Hey guys, welcome to the Mom Show. I'm your host, Courtney Doyle, and this is a place I am giving you permission to not have it all together. Welcome back to the Mom Show. Today's episode is tender, powerful, and full of hope. I'm joined by my friend Nichole, a mom whose journey through secondary infertility and 3 consecutive miscarriages has left a permanent mark on her faith, her identity, and her motherhood. In this season, we're answering the cries of moms who are saying, "Help, I'm a mom who," and Nichole bravely finishes that sentence with "has walked through loss." You'll hear how her honest struggle with control, anger, and grief brought her to a place of deeper surrender and trust in Jesus. She shares the unexpected blessings found in the ashes, the 3 C's that helped her find strength again, and the freeing realization that our worth is not tied to the size of our family. Whether you've walked a similar road or know someone who has, I pray Nichole's story reminds you that you are not alone. Your tears are seen and healing is possible, even in the heartbreak. Grab a coffee. Let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. As you know, this season we are talking help. I'm a mom who, and today my guest Nichole is coming on and she's going to fill in that blank for us. And so Nichole, I want to turn the mic over to you. If I said help, I'm a mom who, what would you fill in the blank with that?
Oh, I would fill in the blank with help. I'm a mom who has struggled with secondary infertility and consecutive miscarriages. Our first child was born. We were so young, newlyweds, sooner than expected. And then I look back at this miraculous birth and conception of him with such forgiving eyes because we didn't know what was going to come next. Around his first birthday, we thought we want to expand our family. We want to try this again and could not. So we ended up getting that secondary infertility diagnosis and then got hit with those 3 back-to-back miscarriages. And it at that end of that loss, it was tricky. We weren't really sure what was going to come next. And then with that diagnosis of secondary infertility, definitely we had a heavy weight on our family at that time.
And so you had your first son. Let's have another baby. The first one was really easy. This shouldn't be a problem. And you go into that. What were some of the things that started happening when to lead to a secondary infertility diagnosis? I don't think a lot of people know about that. People assume that infertility is from the start of trying to have a baby, but you're
Mm.
actually so far the second person that I've interviewed, and I have other people who have reached out to me talking about secondary infertility. So take me back to let's have another baby. How do we go from we want to have a second child to a diagnosis of secondary infertility?
Yeah, I mean, we were definitely really naive since our first son, we had him, found out we were pregnant with him within our first year of marriage. So just thought, okay, plumbing works, we're good to go. And when my husband is 3 and 3 boys, they're all within 4 years, so really close together. So he definitely really wanted everyone to be really close. We thought I come from a family of 6, so thought big family sounds great. We'll start trying again. We had It was relatively easy to conceive and to get those positive pregnancy tests. The first miscarriage was in April. We were about 11 weeks. And then at that point, thought, this happens. You hear about it. And at that point, we'd been hearing about it a little bit more. I feel like it is still pretty taboo, but there wasn't this, people were starting to talk about miscarriages and these struggles. And so we went in and I was able to pass the child naturally. So just felt okay if we have a best worst case situation, this was okay. Got cleared to try in a month, try again. We tried again and had another miscarriage late July. That one needed a D&C procedure. And at that point, because I had 2, our OB said, let's get you in for some further testing, and that's when we got the diagnosis of you're having some secondary infertility with the second miscarriage. And then our third miscarriage was over Thanksgiving that same year in November. And at that point, we had the option to go in for further testing. So to do like a uterine dye and get a little bit more answers with that. We didn't end up having to do that. We took some more time off than what was recommended and were able to conceive and have a full pregnancy the following year. So I think with that, it really was just listening to our doctor and then discerning what's best for our family. Is it the further testing? Is it waiting? What does that look like for us?
And how has it impacted you and your identity as a mom?
It definitely motherhood wasn't something that I initially, when we got married, thought we would do so soon or possibly at all. When we dove into, yes, we want to have a family, we thought, let's just go all in, let's have 4 or 5 kids. But in our initial marriage counseling, when we're in our 20s, we both were very career driven and thought, I don't know if this is our story. So I didn't have the respect of it. And I definitely didn't see how precious it was. After our first loss, the not that I didn't love our son, but I just thought, wow, you are such a miracle. This being able just to be your mom is such a gift. And that second year of motherhood shifted my whole viewpoint on mothering. I remember when he was a toddler, I couldn't control anything because they're toddlers and they're babies and they don't always want to be doing what you want them to do. And I just remember
Mhm.
having all of these just very angry moments and outbursts because I just was so frustrated. And even Googling, I don't want to be an angry mom. And a book came up by the book Triggers by Amber Leah and Wendy Speak. I think I'm saying their names right. But it was a wonderful resource at that point, and it just really changed my perspective of I get to do this. This is a gift, and I need to steward it well versus I have to do this. I have somebody else that's I need to care for. So it stretched me, but I was more patient. I felt like I seeked to understand my children a lot more versus trying to just schedule out and control the day so it went as well as I thought it needed to go. So yeah, I grew a lot in
Mhm.
all of this. It did. It changed my identity in terms of whether it's a good day, bad day, or whatever. Motherhood wasn't a weakness, and it was the reason to keep pressing through all those hard things to
Yeah.
to achieve the dreams of what our family was trying to do.
Mhm. I think that angry, of course, is a very real emotion for a lot of us. And in situational seasons in our life, that can intensify that anger. And so, amidst you parenting a toddler who is not going to stay within the boundaries because
No.
that's what they do, you're also battling this inner turmoil in your body. Three miscarriages in less than a year, just the physical toll that was taking on your body, in addition to the emotional toll and the spiritual
Mm,
toll that it's taking. And so I can understand why anger was a very real feeling for you. But being able to admit that, Nichole, I don't want to be an angry mom. That in and of itself is huge because a lot of people would point the finger and say, I'm angry because I just had another miscarriage. I'm angry
mm,
because he won't listen or whatever. I'm angry because you don't understand that this
mm,
is my body that's going through these miscarriages and these ups and downs of hormone surges and things like that,
mm,
and point the finger elsewhere versus you really self reflecting and saying, I'm angry. This isn't normal. Seek help and
mm,
resources that are going to help me navigate this. I love what you said about motherhood not being it's a want to, not a have
mhm,
to. And when we switch that mindset, then you do begin to see the
mm,
miracle of your children, even in their disobedience or their
mhm.
toddlerhood or whatever it may be. What has been the most unexpected blessing, though? If you can look at three losses so quickly and you wouldn't normally say that was a blessing, but there are unexpected lessons and blessings in our loss. What would you say yours was?
There's a lot of them. I feel like when you lose so deeply, you're only at the pit of hell or the brink of heaven. There's no way to live in the in between when we're surrounded in a world with loss and grief. And I think what I mean by that is when we put our hope in heaven and we put our hope in Jesus, even our loss, the hardest moments, the deepest sadness and suffering, those stories can have redemption. And
Mhm.
that's what we started to feel. Even with those miscarriages, there were little bits and hope and pieces of our story that kept us moving forward. And on the flip side, when we lose hope and we put our faith in the world and I'm supposed to have this, I need this, we believe the lies of I must have done something wrong. I deserve this pain, or I'm just not supposed to have this. I'm not enough. When we believe lies like that, then we live much closer to the enemy. We live closer to hell. And I feel like through each of our loss, as backwards as they took us, it by choosing to move forward with Jesus and saying, Lord, I need you with this. I need your help. I need your strength. It propelled me deeper with him, and just feeling him say, I've got you through this. Your story will be redeemed because of my story. That was,
Yeah.
I mean, I just had such tremendous growth and spiritual growth through this hard time that I
Mhm.
wouldn't have had if we didn't have those losses. So it's easy to say now because of they're in the rear view, but I'm grateful for
Right.
each of them for different reasons.
Yeah. And it is, it's hard to get to that place, but I guess for anyone who's listening who's going through any kind of loss, it's you have to go through it. You can't
Mhm.
go around it. You can't avoid it. It is something that you have to go through. And when you do go through with a relationship with the Lord, then that hope is what really sees you to the other side. To have the lens of looking back and going, I didn't like that. It didn't
Mhm.
feel good, but here are all the ways that God was with me along the path.
Mhm.
And there is a purpose to this. And how can I use this to glorify you? And it does bring you a sense of peace, especially for the future. As you know, because you're a friend, my parents recently passed away very closely together. And as we were standing at the bedside of my mom, there were four of us.
Mhm.
But my mom actually had eight pregnancies. And so I'm the baby of eight. And each one of the miscarriages came before the birth of one of us that are alive. And my mom, her whole life, my whole life, she talked so often about how painful those miscarriages were. Several of them, I want to say two for sure, were really late in
Mhm.
pregnancy miscarriages. And she carried that wound with her. Like that loss never left. And when we stood at her bedside those final hours, there was such a peace and beauty when we were able to share and remind her, Mama, your other four babies are waiting for you. And it gave us such peace. You know, she has four babies here on earth that she's left
Mhm.
behind for a short time until we meet her again. But now she's reunited with those four children. And we would not have that kind of hope and we would not have that kind of story if it weren't for our relationship with the Lord and our knowing without a shadow of a doubt that death is just a blip on the radar and
Mhm.
that eternity is
Gosh.
really what matters. Um, so I want to ask you, and I think I know the answer, but what is your greatest source of strength and encouragement through this and just in being a mom?
Yeah, just obviously Jesus. He is the reason I can talk how I talk about this and this. But going through all of those losses with the help of a counselor, we coined the three C's: the consistence of daily rhythms, counseling, and
Mhm.
community. When I take care of myself, and this applies really to anybody, when you get up, when you do the things, when you journal, when you get in those healthy habits, spending time with the Lord, and then you marry that with counseling, having a good biblical community and counseling and small group, that's when I feel like my mental health was able to heal and I was able
Yeah.
to wrap my arms around, okay, this is hard, but I have these tools and I have
Mm.
these people who are rooting for me and I'm not doing this alone. That when you're alone in grief and when you're alone in hard things, that's exactly where the enemy wants you. He wants you alone where he can grab you. So when you equip yourself with good people to be around, good consistent habits with the Lord and a good counselor, you can overcome a lot. And that's what helped me overcome what we went through.
Yeah. And it's such a good example for our children, too. Those three C's. And I'm going to repeat them again: the consistency of healthy daily habits,
Mhm.
the counseling, and
Mhm.
community. And it sets an example for our children. I'm very open about my counselor and I love my counselor. She's my best friend. And I have no problem as my children have grown and with age and with life comes maybe
Mhm.
bigger concerns, bigger things that your children are dealing with. I am the first person to go to my children and say, "Hey, let's find somebody else besides mom for you to talk to that can really give us some guidance or whatever." I think that's getting better. I think for a long time people, if you went to a
Mhm.
counselor, like that was like, "Wait, what?" And now it's definitely a more favorable conversation. What about the people who say, "But you weren't that far along?" What about that? What about that statement? I have loved ones that have had miscarriages, and it's those brush it off statements of, you didn't even really get to know that baby. It's not the same as if your baby had died of SIDS or if your baby.
Mhm.
How do we address that in
No,
ourselves, and how do we educate people to be different?
no, absolutely. I feel for when you take that test and you know that you are carrying your next child, you've already birthed the dream of my family's growing. You've already said, okay, we're not just a family of three anymore, we're a family of four. And when you lose that, even if it's a week after you took that test or 5 years later, you're still losing that family member because you've already birthed them in your mind. You've already grown in your mind. I think sometimes because miscarriages happen in that first trimester, sometimes people don't even know you're pregnant. You got showing maybe, you haven't announced it, and it's a very isolated grief. So I think that's a really easy way for people to say, oh, well, it didn't come to fruition. In the mother's mind who lost, it absolutely did come to fruition. That baby was hers. That baby was it may not have been on this side of heaven, but in her mind and in her world, it exists and it still exists today. And
Mhm.
the flowers are coming up right now. It's spring, and I have the rose bushes in our backyard. I have three red ones and two white ones. And my kids have asked, Mom, what are these? I said, the three red ones are your siblings that I'll get to see in heaven, and the two white ones represent you. That was just one way I honored them here. And just it kept me saying, these are my babies in bushes, really, which is silly, but it was a way for me to heal and way for me to grieve, and I get to visit them, and it just brings me such peace knowing that I get to remember them. I get to remember how I definitely felt pregnant with them. So, I think that to educate people, when people lose, they don't always want a reason or an excuse. I think sometimes they just want someone to listen and to say, I don't maybe understand what you're going through, but I'm here for you. Or
Yeah.
I haven't lost, but I can't imagine how you feel right now. And it's just even a simple gesture of, can I bring you dinner? Just so they know that they're cared for. I don't think we always have to fix the problem or fix the grief. Because a lot of times with miscarriages, it's not necessarily fixable. It's just something that you have to go through to get to that other side.
Yeah. I love that you chose something to honor their lives, even though you said it's silly. It really isn't. And I think that's
Mm,
another really great piece of advice. Acknowledge their life and
mm,
honor it in whatever way helps you heal. That's a beautiful representation. And you are able to share with your children their three siblings
mm,
and not keep this hidden like it's not something to be talked about. Their life mattered, though it was very short-lived. There was a reason that God had provided that pregnancy for that short amount of time, and those children are indeed waiting for you on the other side. In what ways has miscarriage and infertility did it attempt to define your worth as a woman?
absolutely. Think you know, when you say, "Okay, we're having a baby, we're having a family," I didn't think I wouldn't be able to do it. I'm a woman, I'm healthy, I'm at that point was in my early 20s, so why wouldn't I have a baby? I really
Mm.
don't think until I accepted the truth of I am enough regardless if I'm a mother, just as I am, who I am in Jesus and what he's done for me, did I believe that my worth didn't come from my womb or my performance as a mother.
Mm. Mm. And that's easy. That's easy to get lost in. Like,
Mm,
if I'm a good enough mom, then I'm good enough in Jesus's eyes. It's a performance mentality that we can get
mhm,
into, and our identity absolutely can be lost. I've talked about this a ton on the show. It's why I do the show. I'm speaking from experience of us being on that tightrope. You talked about just a minute ago, you talked about being either on in the pit of hell or the brink of heaven. And I love the way you put that because in motherhood, if we are also allowing our identity to be based on how good we're doing, maybe how good our
mhm,
children are doing, how
mm,
successful a pregnancy is, then we're constantly teetering on that tightrope. And we're either going to fall into a pit of hell. And then, of course, I call it our pit of despair and our pit of pride, because also as your kids begin to grow and they begin to make their own choices and do well, if your identity is completely wrapped up in how successful your children are, then look at me, I'm such a good mom. Look how good my kids are doing. Then what happens when they're not?
Mm,
What does that say about you? And so
mm,
that lost identity in motherhood is really something I think that we all have to be aware of, and we all have to push back against those lies that
mm.
your statement just a second ago was your womb doesn't dictate your
Yeah.
worth. Wow. Nichole, that's very powerful.
But I mean, truly, it's the truth. Whether you're a mom of 1, 0, or 100, our weight is still equal. That's not gonna change regardless of how much I achieve, even if that's in motherhood. I tell my children because 'cause they're starting to go through some hard things. I feel like we're past the Band-Aid parenting. We're starting to get into real problems where we can't just fix it with a lollipop or a Band-Aid. And
Yeah.
I said, "Kiddos, the Lord's writing your story just as much as he's still writing mine. We're not done until we meet him again. So you're still going to go through hard things just like mom, and we're not perfect, but we're going to do it together." And I
Yeah.
think that's how we have to approach things, especially hard loss and hard grief things, is by saying, all right, the Lord's still writing my story. He's with me in it. And it's not going to be perfect, but we're going to come out on the other side with him.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. What would you say to the mom who's in the thick of it? She's waiting, maybe she can't get pregnant, maybe she's
Mhm.
gotten pregnant and she's had a miscarriage, so she's grieving and she's still hoping that this is all gonna turn out the
Mm.
way she envisioned. What do you say to her?
I would just say you are not alone. You are not alone. You are loved and you are enough just as you are. It might not feel like it, but you are going to get through this. This is
Yeah.
not going to be the end of your story. It will end with love and grace and redemption.
Nichole, you said when you and your husband got married and y'all were in premarital counseling, y'all really were both very career driven, and you
Mm.
weren't even sure if children were in the path of what you guys were doing. What would you say to that girl?
I would just say never. Never say never. And I say that because we are living out our nevers. We were never moving to North Carolina. We were never taking we were never taking over the family business or working with the family business. We were never having kids, and my husband was never having a daughter. But oh my gosh, is that little girl just wrapped? Oh, he is wrapped
Yeah.
around her little pinky. And I think because there's just one of her, I have 3 sisters. So at some point, little girls all just become kids when you have so many, and we're just fluctuating schedules. But he is just smitten with her and she is with him. Sometimes I think I could just leave and nobody would notice because those two
Yeah.
would fit for each other. Just never say never because your nevers might just become what you're doing every single day. Hold your plans loosely. I thought I had it all figured out, but the Lord's plan for me has surpassed anything that I could have ever planned out or ever put on my calendar. It has been
Yeah.
such a blessing and just to live by his grace and saying, all right, Lord, this calendar is yours. My day is yours. Do with it what your will is. Being able to surrender that, it's the life is so much more fruitful that way.
Yeah, that's great advice. And yeah, I've never before'd on all the
Which is
things I
great.
said never to. And now I
Yeah.
catch myself. Sometimes I'll be like, we would never do that. I'm like, whoa, hold
Mhm.
on. We may not do that, but Lord, if that's what we're gonna do,
Yes.
we're here. Yeah,
Mhm.
because it's look at us nevering
Than
before.
ever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the show, I always ask, is there something that you're praying for that we could join you in praying for? And do you have a verse that you could share with our listeners?
Right now, the verse that I just over and over again have been repeating over my children is Romans 12:4-5. Just as our bodies have many parts, each part has a special function, so it is with Christ's body. We are many parts of one, all belonging to another. Right now, we are walking through just new friendships, new school. My son is this old soul and sometimes has a hard time connecting with some of his 9-year-old little friends and just praying over great friendships, praying over intentional friendships, because these are just these such sweet formative years. And would love for him to have some good buddies to really grow with over the summer and just through the next few years. That's what I'm praying with right now. It's just godly friendships for my kids.
Yeah, because it's so important. It is so important. And so we will be joining you in that prayer. I know that any of the moms that are listening are probably like, yes, I want some godly
Yes, and
friends for my
amen.
kids. And I think it was Priscilla Shire, she said she's always praying for a heavy burden of discernment or something like that over her children. And so if they're put in situations, they can discern, this probably isn't a great situation or not. And so that's a wonderful prayer, and we will be joining you. Thank you so much for sharing. I know that is not an easy part to your story, but I appreciate the hope and the encouragement for any listener who has experienced that in the past and maybe hasn't told anybody. So I would encourage that if you're a mom and you're listening and you have had miscarriages or you have battled any type of infertility and you're not sharing that with somebody, find a trusted friend, trying to find a trusted counselor and unload that burden. You don't have to carry that alone. And so I appreciate your willingness to share those hard places with us and the hope that you have in Jesus. It's such an encouragement.
Thank you, Courtney. It has just been a pleasure. The story's hard, but we are so grateful. We are so grateful.
Yeah. Thanks, Nichole. Thanks so much for listening to The Mom Show with Courtney Doyle. Remember to check the show notes for any links, books, or resources that are mentioned in each episode. We want to be sure this blesses other mothers, and in order to do this, if you're listening via podcast, be sure that you like and share. If you could write a review, that would be fantastic. It helps us get in front of other moms. If you're watching via YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button. This way, you won't ever miss an episode. We want to make sure that we increase our reach to other mothers who need a little encouragement, a community, and a whole lot of Jesus. We're so glad you're here.